Welcome to Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour, presented by Echo Park Automotive and NASCAR on Fox. And today we have one of my favorite young talents in the sport, Connor Zilisch. And Connor, for me, there's quite a personal connection there because I feel like I was lucky enough to see Connor's talents as he was racing with Keelan in go-karts, obviously in different classes and things like that. But Connor immediately stuck out to me as one of the rare talents that you would see anywhere in racing. And Connor had success around the world in karting and immediately got into full-bodied stock cars. And we introduced them to NASCAR racing and what it was all about. So I hope you enjoyed this time that we got to spend with Connor. Well, Connor, thanks for taking the time today. I talked to our guys, and we always try to schedule things. And I said we need to get Connor and just schedule him after the Cup race because I got a lot of questions. But first, I think the main thing that I want to hear is just give us an overview of how your weekend went. Obviously, you won the Xfinity race, and I think that the big target was on all the chatter around the Cup Series car. But tell us about the experience and everything you went through.
Yeah, obviously start off with the Xfinity race. It was really good. We had the fastest car by quite a bit until I gave myself damage in the final stage coming through the field and kind of cost myself a little bit. But before that, we were, stage one, we were half a second faster than, the 9 and the 17 behind us. And we were really good. And then obviously got that pit road penalty, which cost us a little bit. But I ended up getting back through the field and, with some chaos and drama, but ended up getting the win either way. And then the Cup race, practice was weird. It's hard coming into a weekend where you don't know the car, right? It was my first time driving the Cup car and I didn't know what a good car felt like. So, I went out for practice and we were reasonably quick. So I assumed my car was driving decent, which it didn't feel good. I felt like 5 or 6 numbers loose. And I think everybody kind of fought that throughout practice. And I kind of just didn't really know where I wanted the car to be. So I definitely fell a little bit behind there for qualifying. And we qualified 14th. I, hit the rub blocks in a few spots and we were way too low. And I just didn't know the limit. So I wasn't really given great feedback. And, that kind of set us behind. And then turn one in the race, obviously, I, kind of got stuck middle of 6 wide, it felt like, and came back to the field in
You
stage
did.
2.
You were definitely
Yeah.
6 wide. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched the replay back and I was like, oh yeah, that's never gonna work. But it was fun. I mean, I came back to the field in stage 2, past, a bunch of guys that I feel like are really good and had a really good car. We were the fastest in stage 1. GM sends us a report after the race, and in stage 1, I know I had clean air and I was out there by myself, but my average lap time was like half a second or 4.5 tenths faster than the whole field. So, I knew that we were really fast. And stage 2, coming through the field, we were still one of the best cars. But it was fun. I mean, it was just a big learning experience. I didn't know what I expected in the weekend. It was all just kind of getting thrown into the deep end and kind of guessing on a lot of stuff. But by the end of it, I felt really comfortable. And, it's unfortunate I didn't get to run the third stage because I felt like we had a really good chance to run top 10, top 5.
So how did all that correlate for you from the simulator to all the prep and video and everything that you watched? When you launched out off of pit road for the first time in practice, were you like, oh man, this is way different than I thought? Or what was the feeling that you had right off the bat?
Yeah, it was way different than the simulator. I think every manufacturer completely whiffed on the simulator. We were at least 2 seconds faster in the sim than we were in real life, and I think that caught everybody by surprise. I talked to Kyle Busch before the race at driver intros, and I was like, "So, what do you think about the sim?" And he's like, "Why do we even do it? It's horrible. Why do we even do it?" And I was like, "All right, well, that makes me feel a little bit better." So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a lot of kind of, I don't know, not guesswork, but when it's a new layout, new asphalt, the manufacturers are kind of just taking a swing at it. And we expected it to have way more grip than it did. And when it didn't, it was kind of a shock to me. And, I was really loose in practice and I just didn't realize that's not normal for the cup cars, right? I thought it was kind of just a characteristic of it because it's so rigid and stiff that, it was like that. So I wish I could go back to the start of practice again, and with the knowledge I have now, because I think I would have qualified a lot better and gave myself a better shot, come race time.
So when you look back at all the prep and all the things that you did, who would you say was your biggest help on your team? You guys obviously had a team with just an ultra amount of success with the things that you've done on a road course. SVG, Ross, Daniel, you guys were all pretty fast when it all was said and done at Cota. Who was the biggest help to kind of help you navigate the unknowns that you were getting ready to go through?
Yeah, I think Shane was really helpful given our backgrounds. We kind of come from a similar kind of experience background, and he definitely was able to give me advice that I could relate to, and that was really helpful. And he's someone I definitely have leaned on in the past 3 4 months getting ready for this. And Ross is really good as well. He's one of the most open books that I know. You can ask him anything and he'll give you an honest answer. And it's really helpful to have a teammate like that at my age who's not trying to keep secrets from you. And Daniel as well. He's we were in sim together, all four of us, and kind of comparing notes and comparing how we're driving the racetrack. And it's cool to have three teammates that are all willing to help and give advice, kind of no matter the situation.
So one of the big things that Shane talked about was with the Cup car, he felt more comfortable with his background because of the fact that it drove straight. It didn't have all the movement and yaw. Is that something that you've become used to in the Xfinity car, or did the Cup car feel more natural to you as well, as far as the way that it drove in a straight line, I guess is the best way to put it?
Yeah, well, when we got it driving well, I was like, okay, this feels very familiar, and I definitely relate to him on that. But I feel like it's different for me and him, right? He has 20 years of racing at the highest
Yeah.
level of his sport overseas, and when you get to whatever he's 35 ish, and when you get to that age, you're kind of just this is what I do. I do this every weekend. And if it's something different, it's hard to adapt. But I'm so young. I don't think there's anything that I can say that, oh my gosh, if this is not just like this, then I'm going to be uncomfortable. So, I feel like I'm able to adapt, and nothing really feels, too. I don't have like a certain driving style to match
Yeah.
one race car. I feel like I'm able to move around and switch to different cars. And I fired off in practice, and like lap one, I passed Shane, and I was one of the fastest cars right away. And a lot of that's due to the sim, but also I just feel like I'm able to go out and adapt to a car really quickly, and that's kind of given my background, right? I've driven so many different cars the last 3 years. I've gotten used to that kind of feeling of driving something new. So I feel that's kind of where I come from in that kind of situation. I don't struggle with the Xfinity car really. I've gotten used to it. It took a little bit of time, but even at Watkins Glen, I felt pretty comfortable right away. And I think that kind of just comes from my background.
So when you've driven all these different cars, what would you compare it to that it related to the most from a Cup standpoint?
Yeah, I'd say the GT3 car. The only thing
Mm.
that is weird about the Cup car is the how low you run the rear. It's you got to do it to make speed, but it's so uncomfortable, especially on low air, right? That's how Daniel kind of ended his race. Is we were
Mhm.
out on low air, and you hit a pothole or a dip in a track, and the car bangs the ground, and you kind of lose control of it. So it's that's the toughest part for me, is finding the balance of how low you can run it and make speed without it being too uncomfortable to drive. So that's where I was struggling in qualifying. I in turn 19, I I blew the corner both of my qualifying laps just because I didn't know. I kept telling them, yeah, I think we can go lower. I think we can go lower, and then it was too low. So that's something that I've definitely had to get used to. But the feeling of the car is a lot like a GT3 car. It's really rigid. And
Mhm.
it's the wheel is you're not doing much, you're not turning much, right? It's very kind of everything's a lot faster than the Xfinity car. The Xfinity car, you're rolled over on the outside tire, and three tires on the ground exiting the corner. It's just a lot different and softer, and it's a lot more comfortable feeling. The Cup car is really uncomfortable to drive when it doesn't drive really well, and I feel like the window is a lot smaller to get it driving well.
So you talk about comfortable, uncomfortable. I see that Red Bull hat on your head. You know, they put a massive effort into this sport, you know, 20 years ago, and now they're back on your car. How does it feel to represent a brand like that in your first Cup race and everything that you got to experience? Was there anything, not only the experience that you've had with them, but was there anything cool that they did or you got to do before the race this weekend?
Yeah, the one of the cool things we did, I flew down on Wednesday and we had a 1975 dually Chevy truck that we drove. I had to drive the trailer on or the car on an open trailer through downtown Austin, which was for a guy like me. I'm not a CDL truck driver, so driving that through downtown Austin wasn't very fun. But it's so cool to have a brand like Red Bull, sponsoring me and SVG and coming back into NASCAR after such a I don't want to say unsuccessful first go at it, but it definitely didn't go as they planned. They dumped a lot of money into it, and that didn't really equal results. So I'm glad that they're putting trust in Trackhouse and coming back into it and giving it another shot because I do feel like NASCAR is a great place for Red Bull to be. And it's really cool that they put trust in me at such a young age to go out there and represent their brand. And they do it differently than everybody else when it comes to marketing, and it's a lot of fun to be a part of it. We had a big party on Friday evening. There was 400 or 500 people at this place in downtown Austin. I only stayed for an hour, but it went till 2 in the morning with all these Red Bull people and people in town. So yeah, they definitely do it differently, which is really cool and it's fun to be a part of. But I'm still getting used to it as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a great brand. I don't think you could ask for anything better. I was fortunate to drive for a beer company, and it looks very similar in the way that they activate and promote. So to close the loop on your Cup stuff, I think, is there any plans for anything going forward, or is that the only time we're going to see you in the Cup car this year?
I definitely think that I want to get more reps in the Cup car. Justin said in a serious interview, I saw someone tagged me in it that, to race in the Cup Series, the car is so different, right? You got to get experience in the car to, be prepared when you make that jump to full time. And I don't want to rush myself at all. I don't want to go into races I don't feel like I can compete in. But when there are races that I feel like I'll be ready for, and I can, at least go out and not make a fool of myself, I definitely want to get that experience. Because even Joey says, the car's so different, you're not going to be learning too much in the Xfinity car and the truck versus the Cup car. So definitely the more reps I can get, the better. I'm so out of the loop on what they're doing in the behind the scenes. I know Red Bull is super involved and wants me back in the Cup car, and that's their main focus is the Cup Series. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it, but I'm definitely so far out of the loop on what they're doing behind the scenes that I honestly don't even know.
I like that. That's a good answer. So when we talk about your full-time gig, we'll move on from the Cup race, and when we talk about your full-time gig on the Xfinity side, what are the goals? You've already gone to victory lane. Where are you at with the oval stuff, and where do you feel like you obviously need to keep working on that side of it, and how do you get there as quickly as possible, and what have been the challenges on the ovals for you in Xfinity car so far?
Yeah. I feel like I ran Phoenix, Kansas, Homestead last year in the Xfinity car. I ran Daytona and Atlanta this year, which are, I know you love super speedway racing, so I won't go
Yeah.
into too much depth about that. But I wrecked out of both of those and didn't start the season off too hot. But at the more traditional tracks like Phoenix and Kansas and Homestead, I feel like I was able to get up to speed really fast, and all those races, stage one I was running 10th to 15th, and then at Kansas and Phoenix by the end of the race I ended up finishing top five. And I feel like that's me just kind of learning throughout the race, so I'm excited to get back to those tracks that I've been to already, and already have a bit of a notebook on, because I feel like I'm gonna have a shot to run in the top five, right? The junior cars are really good, and there's only 12 to 15 really competitive cars in the Xfinity Series, so it's a little bit easier than what you may see on Sundays. You can start the race at 80% and still stay inside the top 10 to 15, and that's really helpful for me because I'm able to go out and learn and kind of just take it easy, but start stage two just outside the top 10 with a notebook from the first stage. And, I think that's one of the best parts about the Xfinity series is you can learn without having to set yourself too far back at the start of a race. So I'm excited to get to Phoenix again this weekend. Track I've already been to in this car, and I feel like I'll be able to qualify up front and hopefully run up front all day, get stage points. Obviously, with a win, it's important to get some more playoff points and go for stage wins. So I'm excited to see what it's all about. It's going to be a little different than last year running a full schedule. I can't focus on races as much, but with everyone at Chevrolet and Josh Wise, I still feel like we do a really good job preparing for every race. And no matter what, that's obviously my number one priority is making sure I'm ready when we show up to these tracks that I have been to once or I'm going to for the first time.
Well, that's great. And, I think as the year goes, it'll be fun to watch your progression on the ovals and everything that happens at Junior Motorsports. There's obviously a lot to lean on and a lot of experience there. I want to get to the fun stuff now. And, I think for me, I think this is a pretty fun conversation because I was fortunate to watch you come up through the go-karts and have conversations with you and your family and the things that you did in karting. And we got to this road, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, man, I had the most interesting conversation with Connor's dad way back in the day. I said, what are you going to do with that kid when you're done with karting? And when are you going to be done with karting? And he told me, he said, well, I think I'm going to go let him race spec Miatas, and I'm going to send him to school. And I said, that would be the worst mistake that you ever made in your life. He's got just an abundance of ability. So we took Connor. His dad and I came up with a plan to take him to a Trans Am test that with Maurice and the Silverhair folks that you raced for a couple of years. And I'll never forget it because he went out on the racetrack and William Byron was there the day before and Connor ran the next day and he ran 1 second faster than William Byron did in the exact same car. And from that day on, it's just been lights out forward. But when I look back at your background and the karting and everything that you did there, I believe it's the best platform that anybody could ever put themselves in. Tell people about your karting background, what you did, and what you thought of why it prepared you to be ready to basically do anything in racing that you wanted to do because of you've been to Europe, you raced on the national level. What was the karting platform like for you?
Yeah, I do feel like it is the best thing to learn in as a kid and grow up doing. I was talking to Kyle Busch about it on the driver intro stage because he's with Brexton right now and is kind of growing with Brexton. And he asked me, how did you even get to this point, right? You're so young. And he raced in the Cup Series at 18 as well. And, I kind of told him, I was like, look, karting is the best kind of platform to grow up racing in. One of the biggest keys that I think has helped me so much and has accelerated my progression is honestly just the idea of understanding data and being able to look at data and understand what you're doing wrong, what you can fix. And kids that I'm racing against that are my age, they get into these simulators and they're just driving laps, right? They're not able to look at the little iPad next to them and say, okay, I'm doing XYZ, I need to fix this. And going overseas and racing against all those kids that are now racing in F1, F2, F3, that were really talented at what they were doing. I honestly went over there and wasn't one of the best, and I struggled at first a lot. And I think that's what made me so much better is being able to learn from those kids and be uncomfortable for so many months. I went over there and was missing mains and struggling, and I had never done that before. I had dominated over in America and never struggled. And I went over there and learned how to struggle and learned how to get better. And I think that is what helped me become so much better at, when I came, and raced the Cars Tour. I started off running outside the top 15. My car wasn't great. I didn't know how to give great feedback. And I kind of felt at home in that situation. And I feel like that's one of the most important things is to not, I told Kyle, I was like, make sure you let Brexton struggle. Don't put him in the best car until he's 18 years old, and don't let him dominate everything, right? You got to put him in uncomfortable scenarios, and let him learn, and let him learn to lose. And I feel like that's what allowed me to grow so fast and mature, and definitely helped me when I got to, the point of where I wasn't in the best car and I couldn't go out and win every race. I was able to still finish 10th or 12th, and become a better race car driver and learn from it. So yeah, definitely the data aspect of it, though. That's really important. I'm able to learn so much and grow as a driver because of that. And I feel like other kids struggle with that because you grow up racing legends and late models where you have no data, and then you get to ARCA Xfinity trucks, and you're sitting in the simulator and you're looking at SMT, but you have no idea what you're looking at. So I feel like that's a lot of it, and just learning how to be uncomfortable was so helpful for me.
I would always laugh every time that Connor would show up at the airport, and he'd be 14, 15 years old, and he'd show up by himself at the airport, getting on the airplane and ask for a ride to the racetrack. And I think as you spent that time, and you spent a lot of time away, correctly? Like your
Yeah.
parents would just send you over there to Europe by yourself with Gary, correct?
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, my dad was working a full-time job at the time, and so was my mom. Didn't have, they'd come for a week or two out of the 3 months I was there, but mostly I was on my own.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of those times when you're able to be able to sink or swim on your own, it teaches you a lot at a young age. When you go back and you look at all the experience and the places you've raced all over the world, who are some of the kids? You're still a kid to me, and who are some of the kids that you raced against in that karting around the world that you would say these are the couple guys that stick out, that are world class, that are going to be in F1, IndyCar, that we haven't seen yet?
That you haven't seen yet. Well, that you have seen, I tell everybody the best race car driver that I've ever personally raced against is Kimi Antonelli. It's incredible how good he is and how talented he is, and he's even a little bit younger than me, and he's going into his first season of F1 this year, and he dominated everything, and he obviously always had the best cart and engines and stuff like that. But I remember, I don't know if you know the story of when him and Brent were teammates at Homestead, and you know they thought it was motor. Brent thought, "Oh, my motor's down," and they swapped motors, and Kimmy actually went faster. And there was things like that all the time where he was just so talented and could make anything go fast. And there were a few kids like that. I had a teammate. His name was Nikita Bedrin, and he's racing F3, I think. And I learned a lot from him in karting. He was really talented as well. And then there's kids in America as well that are growing up, and so many of them have changed their paths, right? 10, 5 years ago, every single kid was going into F4 and was going into USF 2000, and just thought open wheel was the only way to go from go-karts. And that's changed a lot in the last 3 or 4 years after I kind of took a different path from karting. But there's so many kids that I race against that were so talented that just never got the opportunity to move on because they didn't meet the right person, right? If I never had the opportunity to meet you and be teammates with Keelan, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. And it's crazy to think about that. There's probably so many other kids out there that are the same same level of talent as me, but just never got their shot. So yeah, it's wild to think about that, but it's part of the sport, and you got to know the right people to make it to the next level.
So, one of the things that your dad would talk about is not knowing the path and not understanding the path. But so before we got together, what was your dream path? Like, did you think that you were going to F1? Did you know anything about NASCAR at that point?
Yeah, honestly, I had no. I knew that F1 was impossible, right? I went overseas and quickly learned that if you don't have 10 million, $15 million in your parents' bank account, then you're not gonna go race F1, or you have zero shot at it. And even still, there's drivers in F1 that you probably don't even think are paying to be there, but they're paying to be there. And it's kind of just how the world has changed, and how racing has changed. But when I came back here, I thought maybe I'll be able to get a shot to race sports cars, and make a living to be a professional race car driver. I always told people that whenever they asked me, well, where do you want to end up? I just said, I just want to race cars and make enough money to have a house and be able to eat. I didn't care if it was, making 60 grand a year, racing cars 30 weekends, or, racing in NASCAR where it's, a completely different world. I just wanted to be able to race and be able to do it for the rest of my life and not have to go to college. But I never knew about NASCAR until I really met you and got introduced to it, and it quickly struck my interest, and I quickly found a passion for it. I didn't realize how intricate and difficult it was till I got involved and started racing late models and got introduced to the ARCA stuff. But meeting Josh Wise and being a part of the Chevrolet development program taught me a lot about how much it does take to be at the top level of any level of motorsports. So it's opened my eyes a lot to not only NASCAR but the entire world of motorsports, and I'm grateful that I'm able to be a part of it.
Yeah, the best part about that conversation is when this was all going down, we had a meeting scheduled to have the IndyCar guys come out and watch, because I thought all the kart kids would not want anything to do with NASCAR. And the IndyCar folks kind of blew us off and they canceled the meeting the day of. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to show you guys, what this is all about. And we created the program with IMSA and Jim France to have, some of the development programs, and Mazda had a great program and went the complete other path. And you and Brent wind up here. So it's pretty cool. And I think it's really changed the complexion of how karting is looked at and how karting kids look at what they have to do and the opportunity, because there's no better training ground than going from karts to legends to late models and on up through the ranks than what you guys have done and the path that you've been on. All right, before we get done here, I've got 3 more questions. Who sleeps more, you or Jesse Love?
Jesse, he's impressive, man. I don't know how he does it. There's days where he wakes up, he's an early riser, but there are days if you let him sleep, he'll sleep until noon, 1 o'clock. It's crazy. And he's an impressive sleeper. I think he takes the cake.
You guys are pretty entertaining on that one. Coolest car you've ever raced?
Still probably the LMP2. That car is just like, it's the first downforce car that I ever raced. And downforce is just a crazy, it's just unreal how much of a difference that makes when you're driving a race car. It's a different feeling. Racing that car, going through turn 1 at Road Atlanta, 130 miles an hour, there's no feeling like it. That car was just so much fun to drive, and I wish that I could do it more.
What was the first car that you drove when you got your license? What was the car that you inherited, were given, bought? What was it? Yeah,
my dad bought me a fire orange 2005 Mazda Speed Miata 6-speed manual. I was racing Miatas at the time and thought they were really cool, and it wasn't until a year or 2 later where I got a Chevy from being a part of the program. So for the first year or so, I drove this 2005 Miata that was a manual, and I probably looked like a tool driving it, but I loved it. It was fun. It handled well, and wasn't fast enough to where I could get in trouble with the cops. So it was a good first car.
That's good. Well, Connor, it's been just fun to watch your progression through everything. You're an amazing human being, and you've got a bright future ahead of you, and you're going to make more than $60,000 a year racing. I can promise you that. So thanks for taking the time today, and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.